Hello, Kyle. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi there, Sarah. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it's so exciting. We haven't talked in a while, but you and I did our training together with Dr. Laura Markham, so we go back a long way. So,
Almost eight
t-
years.
is
Almost eight
it?
years.
Is it?
Yes.
That's
Yeah, because
crazy.
you and I started doing that when my youngest, Ellie, she was born during that training. And
Okay.
now she's 7.5. So
Wow.
yeah,
Amazing.
she turns 8 in April.
Time flies.
Huh?
Yeah. So, tell us a little bit more about who you are and what you do.
Okay. Well, so my name's Kyle Wester, and my wife, Sarah, also a Sarah without an H. Also, Sarah and I are both licensed counselors. So we both went through the master's program together. And whenever we got out, she immediately went into working with kids who'd been sexually and physically abused. So she did a lot of counseling and one-on-one stuff with adults and parents, helping them with those issues, right? A lot of trauma. I went into the elementary school system and started working with kids in the school system, But at that time, we didn't have our kids, Sarah. We didn't have any kids. And so parenting was just kind of a theory. So it was just kind of an existential thought that we had. Now, my wife would come home with all these crazy ideas like, hey, I don't want to spank our kids whenever we have kids. And I'd be like, honey, seriously, no, we're going to spank our kids. Like I understand what you're saying. I mean, because you're a mom and moms don't like to do that because that's typically a dad's job. A dad's got to be tough and strong. And so like I would listen to these things and I would entertain these ideas she had, but she kept coming back with really compelling points. Like, Kyle, I'm helping families who have been the kids who've been traumatized with sexual and physical abuse, and like we don't need to do it. So we'll get into that more. But long story short, that led into us like seeking out information on how we wanted to be parents who really just did it differently. I mean, took some of the good that our parents did for sure, but also just had a reimagining, a new envisioning of what parenting could look like with our kids. And so my wife and I, in that process, really explored training, read all the books, but then I started my own private practice in 2014. So it's been 10 years. And I started immediately helping kids, with just the simple tools I had. But then as we dived into it more and had our own kids and we got to do the training with Dr. Markham and all these other kind of trainings we did with Siegel and other people like that, eventually that led us to starting our own podcast. And our podcast is called The Art of Raising Humans. And so we started to kind of morph the practice into more of a coaching practice, right? To where we get to help parents, similar to you do, Sarah, like help parents all around the world. So it's awesome. It's awesome to get to do that with my wife. She currently is now actually homeschooling the kids. So we homeschool our 3 kids, and we've got a 14-year-old, an 11-year-old, and a 7-year-old. And so she homeschools them, and she doesn't really see clients, but she loves to do the podcast with me, loves to do the reels that we do on social media and all that stuff to help support parents in making this change.
Nice. So she's kind of like like the person in the testing ground. Like,
Yes, totally. Well, Sarah, the whole reason why I did the podcast, I tell people we never expected it to be anything big, but it was to get my wife into our master bedroom closet to just let her share with people what she knows about parenting. And so,
Mhm.
because anytime I was helping parents and I was kind of stumped, I would go back and say, hey, Sarah, what would you
Mhm.
do with this parent? And so Sarah would say, have you tried this? Oh my gosh, that's brilliant. So I would
Yeah.
go back and
Nice.
try it. And the parents would be like, Kyle, that was brilliant. Oh, well, it's really my wife actually helped me with that one. So I felt really selfish kind of having these conversations on a daily basis with my wife, and just felt like I wanted the world to hear it. So my wife is very much more reserved than I am, not as talkative. And so at first she was very nervous about doing the podcast. But as we did the podcast, about 10 episodes in, you could see her getting more comfortable and finding her own voice. And really, the podcast was just a way to let her shine and to really give her that opportunity to share her wisdom with the rest of the world. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can now. So, by the time you had kids, were you already convinced that you weren't going to use spanking as a tool?
No, 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 that's good. No, so my oldest, Abby, who's 14, when she was born, Sarah, I had this really probably antiquated idea, and maybe a lot of dads have this. I was like, hey, Sarah, you're really good with kids like 0 to 4. Why don't you just take care of Abby's? I'm busy. I had 2 jobs at the time. I was doing drug and alcohol counseling. I was doing like, so like, I'll just come home and I'll get to like share the weekends with you guys. Right. And so it was really like, that's how it kind of rolled. And, not that Sarah was happy with that, but it was like,
Just an aside.
no, Sarah, but it was kind of like, since I was an elementary school counselor, I was like, oh, when they get to elementary school age, that's when I can really jump in. Right. But then a conflict arose, Sarah. The conflict arose when a second kid was coming. So when the second kid was coming and Brennan was going to be born, and Brennan is 11, when Brennan was going to be born, now I had to spend a lot more time with Abby. And that's when the issues started to arise, meaning like Abby at that point's about 2.5, 3 years old. And now Abby and I are just going at it. Like I'm seeing this emotion, this large coming out of Abby, and this thing in me that my dad did, which is like, you just get bigger, you get stronger, you intimidate, you overwhelm. Like she needs to know who is the boss, right? And so we weren't spanking. I totally sold into that because like I was like, you're right. I think hitting another human isn't the way to go. But I still was thinking, maybe we got to do timeout. So I remember in all my kids' entire life, we did one timeout, and we did that with Abby one time. And Abby was articulate enough, being raised by 2 counselors, that she said to my wife, she said, "So is Dad saying he won't love me until I act better? Is that what he's
Oh
telling me?"
gosh.
And when Sarah gave me that feedback, I'm like, no, she's misunderstanding the whole point of the time out was just to give you some space to calm down. But then it was like, wait, I don't think kids actually understand that. Like kids, when you put them in timeout, it's basically, I basically was saying that, Sarah. I was,
Yeah, I mean that's
when I,
the sort of the point of timeout, right?
yeah, yeah, it was kind of like, I don't like how you're acting. Go straighten up and then you'll get my love and
I'll
connection
ignore
back.
you until you act better.
Yes, and I
Yeah.
didn't realize I was even saying it until Abby said that back to me. I thought I'm doing it for the betterment of both of us, and she just, and so once she said that, I knew, okay, this isn't working. But the big shift happened. And this is something my wife was getting concerned. Once we had the two, and these arguments with Abby were happening more and more frequently. I mean, they were happening like 3 a.m. Abby was one of those kids who would wake up at 3 a.m. and not go back to sleep. Like she just was up. And so I'd be like, do you know I have work tomorrow? I have to help other parents. I need you to go to bed. And she would be yelling back at me, and we'd be going at it. And so Sarah was worried. She's thinking, man, I don't know if this is going to work out with Kyle, with these kids. Like I'm not going to raise kids in this kind of environment. But to me, this was the environment I had growing up. It was not, I wasn't doing anything weird, And so then I actually got my school to pay me to go to Florida. And there I got to go to this really awesome parenting conference. And there I learned, Sarah, all the stuff you already know, but like a lot about the brain and how fear affects the brain, and how I called my wife, Sarah, in tears. I called my wife in tears and just said, hey, honey, it's going to change. This has to change. I'm sorry. Right. And she said it was such an answer to just prayer for her that she wasn't sure if this was going to work. And then
Right.
after that, I jumped in full tilt. Like from then on, it was like we started putting posters around the house. We started like, this is how we're going to do it. And it was an awesome shift. And this is what I hope your listeners hear. It was not only an awesome shift in me, it was also not just an awesome shift between me and my kids, but it deepened our marriage. Like our marriage has never been better once I made that shift to say, hey, let's create a unified vision of where we want to go with these kids. And let's just start doing that. And since then, it's been awesome to see that grow.
Okay, so here's the problem, and like what we were going to talk about today is you you had a wife who was saying like, "Hey, let's do this different. Let's not yell at them. Let's not do timeouts." But you were not. You didn't listen to her, right?
No,
And it
no.
took an outside
Yeah.
force, you
Yes.
going to
Yeah.
this conference,
Yes.
to finally hear it and to get that
Yes.
understanding.
Yes.
So, and that's my experience too. Is that like
Yes.
as a coach, a lot of times dads will come into sessions and
Yes.
their partner has been telling them blah 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 all the things, and they're not. But then when I say it,
Yeah.
they're willing to
Yeah.
listen, right? They're willing, and part of that I think is that when our partner tells us like, quote, we're doing it wrong, we get a shame response and we get more defensive because we feel like our partner's saying we're not a good parent, right? Or
Yes.
you're not being a good parent, or you're not being a good person. and that you don't get that same shame response when you learn something from somebody else,
Yeah.
right? Who's
Yeah.
who don't you don't have any skin in the game with, and also that sort of intellectual piece that you talked about, like learning about the brain.
Yes.
So, but for parents who are listening to this, who are like, oh, well, I can't even get my partner to listen to me, let alone go to a conference about parenting. Like, what do they, like, where do they start? What do they do? Like when they have that dad, and I'm going to be like totally like gender, like throwing
Sure.
like I know there are people who are
Yes.
listening who the dad is the peaceful parent, or maybe they
Yes.
have like same sex
Yeah.
parents, but I would say like the stereotype has some truth to it, that it's often the mom who's doing all of the reading about parenting and who wants to be the peaceful parent. And in a heterosexual marriage, it's the dad who's saying, so forgive us, we're going to talk in those very gendered norms here. But like that's what I see. And I think that's what you see too, is like 90% of the time it's the mom who wants to be peaceful and the dad who doesn't believe in it.
Yeah, no,
So what
totally. And
what
even
do
I'd say,
parents
Sarah,
do?
it's typically the mom who's also seeking out the help, even if she is a
And
yeller
doing all
too.
the reading about it,
Exactly.
reading
Yeah,
all
yeah,
the
yeah.
books,
Yeah,
listening to the
yeah.
podcasts.
Yes, exactly. Yes. 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 So what do they do? That's I mean, I think what my wife did that actually made that moment possible, Sarah, is it was a lot of her being really patient with me, but also being very intentional about what she would and would not be allowing in the home. And what I mean by that was there was never a threat of divorce. She never like said, I'm leaving you if you don't, right? But there was this idea, like she had no idea that conference was going to come up. She had no idea that this person was going to rock my world, right? I had no idea that was going to happen, you know? So it actually, I didn't go to that conference for me. I went to that conference. And many times I've seen dads have these aha moments, Sarah, at a business conference, right? Like they've gone to the business conference and they find out, wait, this works in management. Like this, and they'll have this moment, wait, if this works with my employees, or like if I want a boss who doesn't yell at me, oh wait, I see what my wife's been saying. So I would suggest, I mean, for me and my wife, what helped me be receptive to that info was she didn't shame me. She never saw herself as better than me. She believed that I would be moved by love for my kids eventually, right? Now, she did worry, she did have concerns, but I was a lot of little conversations I remember that when I look back, that she would just have these conversations where she was firm, but very kind, just like we'd want to have with our kids, right? Firm, like, hey, this is what I want to happen in our parenting. But I also understand it's a journey. And I understand it may take you a little bit to get there, right? And so I by no means am telling any mom on here, oh yeah, it's easy. Just say this to him. Here's the magic. I really think it was a couple years of I remember I remember almost every conversation I had, Sarah, where she's like, "Hey, we're not going to spank our kids," and I'd be like, "What?" And I remember I always left like completely like, "You don't know what you're talking about," but I left thinking, "Wow, Sarah made a really good point." That was really good. And I want to tell you, my wife is not a good arguer. She's not a great debater. My wife just knew, she was firm in what she believed was the right way, the healthy way to raise little human beings. And her determination, you know, like we love something called the Enneagram as a person. She's a 9. She's a peacemaker. Like she's like, she does not like conflict. So it just, I want to encourage any one of them, if you just continue to be patient and continue to engage the conversation, but also continue to be firm that this is the way we are going to love our kids. I believe in the power of love and that the love is transformative. And eventually I believe it was love that led me to that conference. And it was love that eventually, helped me change.
Okay. I mean, I believe in what you're saying,
Yeah.
and I've also been doing this for long enough that I'm wondering if we can come up with like something more concrete for people who
Yes.
are in
Yes.
this position. Because I what I always say too is, the peaceful parenting strategies, and you just talked about, being kind, firm limits, right?
Yes. Yep. Yep. Yep.
Peaceful parenting strategies are relationship strategies. They're not just parenting strategies. And that, using, when your partner's losing it, remembering that they're doing the best they can,
Yes.
and
Yes.
approach
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
empathic limits, leading with empathy, and all of that stuff. And at the same time, can you think of anything that, any, I want to say arguments, although I don't want people to approach it
Mm.
as an argument, but like
Oh yeah. Yeah.
anything that you felt really hit with dad, like any pieces of of knowledge or nuggets of examples that you've seen get dads to
Love it.
reach that aha moment?
Of course, yeah, yeah. I mean, a couple quick ones is, yeah. When I'm talking to a dad, a couple quick ones I love because they'll say things like, "Yeah, my parents did this and I turned out fine." And so I love to say, "Oh yeah, fine's great." That's, I think, if you want your kids to turn out fine, yeah, I keep doing it for sure. But if you want your kids to be great, I have another pathway, right? And so I'd actually want, and typically a dad goes, "Oh, that's true. I actually do want them to turn out great," right? Or I have them reflect upon the people in their life, because yeah, I have had these in-depth discussions with dads who have really transformed them, like the teachers that really impacted them, the coaches that really reached them, right? And even if those coaches were yellers, it wasn't the yelling that did it. It was the relationship that did it, right? It was the relationship that changed it. It was the connection, the deep connection. And then I love to have dads tell me, what kind of dad do you hope your kids someday say you are? So when they leave the house at 18 years old and they say, my dad was this kind of dad, because really, Sarah, that changed everything for me. Was I was parenting in a reactive way, which meant I was always letting the present moment dictate my next action. I wasn't parenting intentionally with the future in mind, right? And so a lot of times when dads actually sit down and say, well, I mean, I'll just get a whiteboard, like, what kind of dad do you want to be? Like, how would they describe you? They start to like da 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 da, right? And then I say, okay, if you could dream for me. So there is like this 5-step process I take that through. If you could dream for me just a second, like, how do you want the relationship to look like? So when they leave the house, how are they going to describe you, and how would you describe the relationship? Okay. Now what are some obstacles that you've run into to help actually have that relationship happen? Because it seems like you don't have that right now, right? And they'd be like, no. And then they find out, oh, wait, the techniques I'm using right now are the obstacle. And then the fourth question I ask is, what are you afraid is actually going to happen to your relationship with your kid? Like, be honest with me. What are you afraid of if you keep going down this road? Because it isn't working, right?
Mhm.
And it's not just your wife saying that. Come on. It's your kids saying it too. What are you afraid of? And then the last one is, what's one thing you think you need to do differently today to start having the relationship you just told me you dreamed you wanted?
What
And
kind of
that's
answers do you get?
almost all the time. I need to stop being so rigid. I need to stop getting triggered so easily, right? And that's typically going to be, yelling. Some dads, I need to stop withdrawing. So many of them, it's like, I need to keep engaging. I need to spend time, like really lots of them. I was just talking to a great dad yesterday, having breakfast with him, Sarah, and he was telling me like he's on this kick where he's getting off social media. He's got this whole dream. So he's not been on his phone as much. And he was telling me, he's like, Kyle, what I was surprised by, it wasn't that social media was bad. I mean, it's actually getting on social media is good, but it's like, I was just filling my time with it. I have no idea how to engage my kids. That's why I was coming home. I'm sick of the same old stories. I'm bored with the same old shows. I don't like the same games, right? And so he realized, oh, he was just on his phone and social media to avoid all that, right? So,
Mhm.
so to a lot of dads, it's like, I need to get on the floor and play with my kid. And if I do that, that's a game changer, because all of a sudden now I'm wiring my brain to see my kid differently. They're more open and receptive to me when I ask them to do things. I mean, so lots of times it's simply so. I find if that dream kind of scenario really really helps, if a dad can start thinking like, what is the relationship you want? Where do you want to go? What's the end game here? And then they have to almost 100% of the time they eventually come to that honest realization of the thing they're doing now is actually undermining them achieving the goal and dream that they wanted with their kids.
Yeah, and I think often dads can see that, like, moms who are doing peaceful parenting do have that closer relationship, like, in the present,
Yes.
right, with the
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah.
And some
And the kids are naturally more responsive and more receptive because of that. Yeah.
yeah. One thing that I know comes up a lot for in our community is that, there's a when you're peaceful parenting, I remember this story from so my middle son, who's 19 now, super, super strong-willed, and he and my
Hmm.
husband butted heads a lot as he was growing up, and, he said something once to me when he was, like, 13. He said something like, I can't remember his exact words, but it was something like, you're not as it the gist of it was like, "You're not as, tough as a parent as dad is." Like, you're like, you're kind of weak, kind of was
Yeah. Yeah.
that. And I said, "Huh, have you ever not done anything that I've wanted you to do?" And he
Hmm.
was like, "No." like he kind of realized like what he was seeing as like strength of like his dad was like this like yelling sometimes or whatever, and then he realized that like what he saw in me was like this like
Yes.
the gentleness,
Yeah.
but he always did everything that I
Yeah.
wanted him to do. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah. I know.
So I
Yeah.
think sometimes like from the outside, even from somebody experiencing it, like my kid, from the outside, it can look like peaceful parenting is weak,
Yeah.
right? Like that you let kids get away with things, or like you're too flexible,
Yeah. Yeah.
or whatever. And I think that's what sometimes throws a lot of dads off, is that they don't want to be perceived as like
Yes.
weak.
Yes.
So what do you say to that? Like how do
That's so good.
you yeah.
Typically what I do, there's a really great story. This was a big aha moment for me, where I would come home on a regular basis after working all day. And there was a few weeks there where I would come home and Abby had just hit about 4. And Abby was like, Abby could be a fireball. Like she was big emotion. So I would come home and I would hear in the back of the room, I'd hear Sarah talking to Abby and Abby screaming in her face. And immediately when I came home, man, I would think, what are you doing? Like, you need to control her. You cannot let her talk to you that way. So I would, I would immediately slip into, I'm strong, you're weak. So I would come in, and I feel embarrassed to say this, but I'd walk in and say, Sarah, get out. Like, you can leave. All right. I've got this. Because I felt like I just had this really negative perspective, this like condescending thinking that like you're the problem, Sarah. Get out. Like, so Sarah, you can leave. I got this. And then I say, Abby, you're not going to talk to your mom that way. And I just lay into Abby, right? And eventually Abby would relent. It would take about 15 minutes, but eventually Abby would go to bed and I'd walk away feeling kind of vindicated, but also feeling like crap. I did not like feeling that way. And so I remember I did that a couple nights in a row, Sarah. And then I came in one night after having done that, and I came to the couch, and Sarah was on the couch. My wife was on the couch. And I said to her, why are you so weak? Like, why are you so passive? You're so permissive. Like, how do you let a kid talk to you that way? Like, and I just can't understand how you put up with it. And she said, Kyle, I'm passive in those moments because I'm afraid of how aggressive you're going to be. Like, as soon as I hear the door open up, I know, oh my gosh, one of us needs to back off, because
Mhm.
if I get, we're going to both attack this 4-year-old. We're going to both start screaming at this kid. Like, one of us needs to be with her. So I'm like, so then I was kind of confused. I'm like, wait a second, how did you turn that on me? Like, you're the problem. I'm not the problem. You are. And so we both just kind of sat there, kind of getting composure, kind of calming ourselves down. And I said, okay, Sarah, then what's the answer? And Sarah said, I just want you to trust me. Can you trust me? And she said, maybe what I'm doing is weak. Maybe I don't even know what the crap I'm doing. But you know what? I need to figure it out. And I need to figure it out with Abby. And so I said, then what do you want me to do? If you come home, here's what I'd appreciate you to do, Kyle. Walk in that room if that's happening and just say, do you need my help? And if I say no, leave. And I said, then do what? Sit on the couch and maybe think some positive thoughts about me. Maybe believe and trust that I can figure this out. I'm smart. I'm not an idiot. Like, I can figure this out with her. And I want Abby to know I can too. She needs to know I can. And she's like, maybe Abby will help me grow into the mom I need to be through these interactions, right?
Mhm.
Figure. So it blew me away. I was like, okay, I'll experiment with this. The next day, the same thing was happening. And it was very easy to be like, oh yeah, let's see this work. And I walked in there and I was like, do you need my help? She said, no, I've got it. And I went back. And as I listened and moved out of the space of judgment and just tried to be receptive, it was really awesome to hear Abby go from screaming in her face to calming down and crying, and eventually Sarah holding her. And like, it turned much faster than my yelling did. It was like 5 minutes. I'm thinking, wait, maybe I poured gas on it before, right? And so then Sarah would come back, and I'd be like, "How'd you do that?" and then this happened like few nights in a row. I did this, and then one night I walk in and I say, "Hey, do you need my help?" She said, "Yes, I do need your help. Like, I'm kind of tired and stressed out today." And so I was like, and I found myself in this other. I was like, "Cool, I'm gonna do that thing that she was doing." So like, I tried to do it, and Abby totally responded to it, and it felt good. Like, I walked away, and I was like, "Dang, this actually does work." And so that turned into this like fondness and admiration that I started to have more for her and her ability to do this in a way that I never imagined it could be done, right? And then it was neat too for her to trust me by saying, "Yeah, hey, high five. Let's tag team. I can't keep doing this." So then I didn't come in a place of judgment. Get out of here. You're weak. But I came in and say, "Oh, cool. You need help." And then I was already in that space to go, Abby, you need help too. Let's go. Right.
But another transformation had to happen in your head, which was that what you said in a minute ago, you're like, you can't talk to your mother like this. You can't scream in your
Yes.
mother's face.
Yeah.
Like something had to transform in you
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
see that as not something that needed to be stamped out.
Yes. Yeah. No, that was, and I think that came from that conversation with Sarah, which Sarah turned it around to. This isn't about Abby talking to her a certain way, a bad way or a good way. This is about Sarah growing as a mom. And that in these moments, Sarah, the very thing I was saying Sarah was being was weak and she wasn't being assertive enough. And she's saying, you're right. I do need to become more assertive. And I am going to grow in my strength to do that. Not my strength to dominate her, but the strength to be the mom I need to be for her. Right. And so that was a compelling argument for me that, like, oh, yeah, how would she ever know how to do it if I keep sweeping in? And I remember she even said, maybe in the end, Kyle, we'll figure out that the best way is the way you're doing it. She's like, I'm not even judging you doing that. I'm saying this is about my own growth and my own development as a mother. And I was like, okay, that's compelling. I need to back off and let her give this a try and let her see it. And so after sitting there, and then of course, knowing the brain science, I knew, that my judgment would make it harder for her. I
Mm-hmm.
knew me coming in and modeling that to Abby, talking condescendingly to Sarah, because once again, I was being a human I didn't want my kid to be. I was talking to her mother in a way I didn't want her to talk to her mother. So, like, what am I talking about? Like, it's so hypocritical, right? So I need to come in and believe in her mom and trust her mom, because that's exactly what I want Abby to do. So in that I think that was a compelling thing of like, cool, let's see. I think Sarah does need to grow in this, and I want to give her some opportunity to do that, to practice these
Mm-hmm.
skills, get better at
Mm-hmm. I'm going to keep pushing you on this
it.
though,
Yeah.
because you still had to like it. I mean, unless I'm misunderstanding, I don't think that your transformation and Sarah's transformation magically stopped making Abby have big feelings where she
Yes.
might
No,
scream
it
in
did not.
someone's
It did not.
face.
It did. It
And
did
so
not.
you still had to come to a point where you weren't seeing a parent quote tolerating or
Yes.
being
Yeah.
permissive of a child screaming in their face as being
Yeah.
weak.
Yeah. No, that's good. No, I would say through that process of seeing some success, and I would say even today, I think that wiring is deep down in every dad. Every dad grew up, I mean, probably almost every son grew up seeing their dad say, you can't talk to your mom that way. You
Yes.
cannot.
And
Right.
you
So
see that
that
all
was,
over social
yes,
media too. Like
that was a common
these
thing.
like examples, quote, good examples of parenting of like the dads. I've seen some awful videos of dads
Yes.
screaming at kids
I know.
to not talk to their mother that way,
Yes.
and like the most horrible, frightening,
Yes.
disrespectful ways, and
Yeah.
putting that on social media as like this
No.
is what good parenting looks like. But yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like that's what I think
Well,
one of the
it's deep.
biggest things to
Yeah.
counter is.
It is. It's deep down. And if I'm working with a dad, I just got to own that that's not going to go away. That wiring is going to be there till you die, right? Because it was wired deep to believe those moments, that's what you need to do, right? So it really is about shifting obviously, one, not letting yourself react to that and just buy into that, but taking a moment to be able to see there could be a different way to perceive this situation, right? And so every time, you're right, Sarah, every time that still happens. I've been doing this a long time. I still have to stop myself and go, wait, one, modeling is the most powerful teacher. So how am I about to talk to her, the kid, in this case, Abby, or how am I going to talk to mom, right? What am I modeling? Am I being the human being I'm asking them to be, right? Then two, it was buying into that respect, which was what the whole, that's the reactive thing is, you're being so disrespectful. That respect, it actually comes out of not being aggressive, out of not being passive. It comes out of being assertive. It comes out of really modeling and saying to the kid what you want them to say. So I love helping dads do that. Like, you really want them to be, respectful, then tell them how to do that. The more you resist them, the more disrespectful you become, and you will actually reinforce the very behavior they're saying. So that's typically a pretty, compelling argument for most dads of like, what do you want them to say? Stop telling me what you don't want. We all get it. You've said it several times. Good Lord, like, shut it down. Like, tell them what you want them to say. Okay. And many times the dad will He doesn't know. He actually doesn't know. He has no idea what he wants them to say. And that's why he keeps defaulting. So once you help them get kind of a script, like you go through a few situations, like, okay, what did we want them to say in this? That was upsetting to you. How would you rather them say it? And you give that to them. That's really empowering to a dad. Because I think inevitably that's what the dad wants. The dad is actually, I mean, I think, Sarah, you and I know this, that as a dad is actually being like treating the kid in a way he doesn't want the kid to treat him. So much shame as a result of that. There's so much dissonance and incongruence, and it's just a lot of self-hatred because the dad, and that makes it harder for the dad to be open to change because he hates how he's being a hypocrite, you know? So once you can say, here's this, it's not about how to stop that kid. It's actually about understanding what that kid is trying to say and telling them to say it in a way you would prefer them to say.
Right. Looking for that need that's driving the
What,
behavior.
and for me, Sarah, it helped guide my energy instead of like as you can tell in talking, I have a lot of energy. I can get really so when I was like, wait, that's what the energy for. It isn't to like resist them and stop them and overwhelm them. It's actually to guide them. It's just to like go, hey, say it. So in my house, even today, with all three of my kids, I'm like, hey, let's try to say it this way, right? Hey, let's say it that way. Hey, try it that way. And like I'm saying that constantly throughout the day. And then the kids are, oh, that sounded better. I like that. That was awesome. You know, so like an example for a lot of parents will be like, you know, when my kids were little, Dad, give me some Cheerios. And you know, the dad would, hey, don't boss me around. I'm not, and that's what I would feel. But in that, instead, what I'd say, Sarah, is like, hey, it sounds like you want some Cheerios. You know what I think would work better if you walked in and said, Dad, you're amazing. I love you. You're like one of the best dads I know. If you got me Cheerios, that would be awesome. And then I said, try that. So then my kid would laugh, and then my kid would come back and say it that way. And then I would go, thank you. That was so nice of you. I appreciate the compliments. I'll totally get
Yeah.
you the Cheerios. And
I
so,
love that.
yeah, so I love switching the energy and just making it playful like that, and the kids actually appreciate it because really, just like my wife, like Sarah, wants me to tell her how to talk to me. She doesn't want me to keep telling her how not to talk to me. She'd rather say, "Hey, I'd prefer it this way." And so I think that's one last point I would make is I think a big switch for dads is I try to tell them like, "Hey, the way you spoke to your kid just then, how would that work in your marriage?" Like if you spoke to your wife that way, do you think it would help your relationship with your wife or hurt it? And I want them to see that the same skills that work with a kid work in your marriage work with your kid because they're all human beings. So your wife wouldn't like it. She would actually be less open and receptive to having a relationship with you, and your kid's going to do the exact same thing.
Yeah, totally. Have you ever seen, I don't know if you're on Instagram at all, but there's this guy, I think his name is Visco Dad. I don't
No, I
know.
haven't seen that. No.
He's got a lot of followers,
Okay.
and he does these great, he has two teenage daughters, and he does these great modelings with them about how you talk to kids. And he's a very, let's say, like kind of red-blooded American male type of dad. Like he's not like a touchy-feely
Yes,
sort of
yes,
dad.
yes, yep.
And he has these great, like one I saw recently was like, he does these role plays where he'll like one of his daughters will ask him something and he'll be like, "No way, absolutely not." And then and then he'll ask them something like, "Can you do this for me?" And they'll be like, "No." And then there's another, and then right after it's like, he'll model talking to them in a different way. And then he'll say
Yes.
like, "Can you bring your brother to soccer practice?" And they're like, "Oh, of course, Dad, no problem." But he does a really nice job of modeling that.
You're yes, I do know him. He actually lives in the same city I live in.
Oh, does he?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So yeah,
And
now that you say it,
he always ends by
yes.
going, "Do
Yeah,
better."
that's right. Yes, yes. No, he actually his kids go to the high school I graduated from.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
no, that's funny. Yeah, I didn't think of it that last name, but no, I see, and that's exactly what I think is so empowering for dads. Is once again, it's not don't be you because I think you brought up a really good point. Is I think this energy and this power, this quote unquote strength that you're bringing to the table, it one. I think dads have it more often than moms, just because dads had it modeled more. It was applauded more. It was told be this, go do that. Like coaches were like, go tell them what you want. Go do this. So I think for dads, like it actually, they have been taught through their childhood that your strength is in resisting your kid and intimidating over. And like, no, your strength is in guiding. Like your kid is actually saying, Dad, just tell me a different way to do it. Like if
Mhm.
I don't want, I mean, no kid's waking up hoping you get pissed off at them. Like the kid actually is like, if I'm not doing it how you want me to do it, please tell me another way. I'd love to be able to do that. So it's really fun when I work with teenagers to help teenagers understand that too. And to like bring, if I get a chance to work with a dad and the teenager, oh, it just totally transforms it. That the kid's actually like, Dad, just tell me what to do. You keep getting so mad that I'm not doing it right. Well, you obviously have an idea of how to do it. Just tell me. You know? So like
Mhm.
a quick thing that I when I practice this with Brennan, when he was little, he got into the habit at like 3 or 4 of growling at me. And so I'd say something like, "Hey, Brennan, let's put up those toys." And he'd go, "Arr!" And like the first few times he did it, I was like, what the crap? Like I cannot put up with this. Like you're not a dog. You're cute. So at first I'd be like, Brennan, do not growl at me. That was my first couple reactions. But then I would stop and say, hey, Kyle, use your training. Try to be. So then I was like, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to connect with him when he growls. So when he goes, I'm just going to growl back at him. And I go, I'm going to eat you, Brennan. And then Brennan would run and I would be running after him. And then Sarah, I would pick him up, throw him on the couch, start like wrestling with him. And then before I knew it, he'd start to cry and I would hold him. And then I'd say, hey, Brennan, what was it you were mad about? And I found that kind of technique of playing roughhousing, getting them, and then it helped us both shift. It helped me get away from who the crap do you think you are to, hey, what is it you're really trying to say? And then typically, Sarah, his little brain was like, I thought you were saying I could never play with that ever again. So, and I was like, no, son, I was just saying we needed to go to the store. So like, it was cool. And he's like, oh, okay, that's fine. And I would look back and think, man, if I had kept just yelling at him, like just think he would have kept believing, like, Dad doesn't think I should get mad when he tells me I can never play with that ever again. And then with my son Brennan, his issue would have been different. He tends to lean more towards being a compliant kid who just like, so I think he would have just learned to just be a people pleaser and
Mhm.
just to not upset me. Right. And
Right.
so I was so happy we had those moments. And there's been some moments like I said where he stood up to me and I've sat back when he did it. And instead of saying, don't talk to me that way, I was actually like, dude, that was awesome. I mean, I didn't necessarily like everything you said in that moment, but the fact that you stood up to me, I bet I looked scary. And he's like, you did look scary. I was like, and you did it. And one time I even said, hey, Brennan, come out. Let's tell mom and your sisters what you did. Brennan just stood up to me in the room. It was awesome. So, like, I'll give my, and his look on his face is like, okay, cool. Okay, this is good. It's safe to do that. If dad's getting really big, he wants me to assert myself. And I'm like, buddy, I do. I want to see you. I don't want you to shrink and cower if I'm being a jerk.
Mhm. What's some of the I mean, as we're talking, it sort of strikes me that, like, there's this, sense of, like, how boys were raised, how fathers modeled masculinity and their role in the family. And as you said, that's like deeply wired and it might never go away, but it's constantly becoming aware of your triggers and aware of those first thoughts or first instincts when you've got a kid screaming in your face or growling at you or whatever it is. And it's a process of always being aware of that and countering it, right? So, what are some things that have helped dads that you've worked with to, I, I guess, like, I just keep coming back to that feeling of like, I don't want to be weak, right?
Yes.
Like, coming back to that feeling of how it's possible for dads to see things in a different way and have a different sort of relationship and a different sort
Yeah.
of model.
Yeah. That's awesome. First, I try to tell him, like, hey, it's actually if I get a dad, 101, it's the weakest thing I know, buddy, to get really big and strong and intimidate a 4-year-old. Any weak person can do that, right? It actually takes a lot of strength. Like I'll give them an example of one time my dad and I were playing football with some guys, and my dad typically was a hothead and he would lose it a lot. The strongest I ever saw my dad, the moment when I really was like, wow, my dad is strong. We were playing football with these guys who were like big and strong, and it was tackle football. And like these guys were running with the football, and one of them cusses, like drops the F bomb, right? And my dad said, hey, kids, hey, guys, we're not going to do that. My kids are here. You need to clean up the language, right? And so my dad was kind of real old school like that. He's not gonna like let the. And so then the kids, a few minutes later, they do it again. And my dad said, "Hey, that's twice now. I'm gonna ask you one more time. If you do it one more time, we're gonna leave, right?" And I remember a third time it ended up happening. This guy drops the F bomb again. My dad walks up to the guy, and my dad says, "Hey guys, that's it. We're leaving." And the guy looks over my dad. He was taller than my dad, and he said, "F you, man." And he looked like he was going to fight my dad. And I remember being so scared as a kid, thinking my dad was going to lose his cool and be a hothead. And my dad looked at that guy and said, "You have a good day." And he grabbed the ball and we walked off. And I that always has stuck with me. And most dads that I talk to had a moment like that where they've seen somebody have self control, and that looks so much stronger. Like, and then if you bring up, and when I did anger management groups, what's the most powerful guy you know? And they pick some kind of UFC guy who they think is super strong. He'd fight. Be like, dude, if he was in line at a bar and somebody bumped into him and he said, hey, or like cut in front of him and said, hey, dude, you cut in front of me. And he turned around, looked at the guy and said, what are you going to do about it? And every one of them say, "Oh, well, I mean, he would. I mean, he can't fight that guy because that would be bad for him, right?" So, I'm like, so what do you think? He'd probably just leave it alone. He probably, oh, that's interesting. Well, what would you do? Oh, I'd totally fight that guy. I totally fight that guy. Why would you fight that guy? Well, because I got to show him he can't talk to me that way. Oh, isn't that interesting? So the UFC guy had nothing to prove. So that's why he wouldn't fight that guy. But you do. So I actually think the reason why you have to act like that is because you're still not sure if you are strong. You've got to make sure they know that you are. And so if I can shift that around of just having a different picture of what that looks like, and I give an example for me, for the strength for me, Sarah, was I love to smile. I mean, it makes my kids think I'm crazy. But if I'm getting mad and getting triggered, if I give a big smile to them, they're like, Dad, why are you smiling? Because I'm about to get really mad and I'm trying to calm down. So like I'll smile because we know neurologically smiling tells my brain it's not it. So I remember one time I'm talking to Abby in her room and Abby and I are having this serious conversation. And poor Brendan, he came in right at the wrong time. Brendan walks in and Abby says something like, Brendan, I told you to get that out of my room. And I look at him and I'm already kind of in this heated space with Abby. So I look at him and say, did you hear what she said? Get it out of the room, dude. Get it out. And Brendan just like freezes. He's just like frozen. And I remember I stared at him and I remember almost having this out of body experience. And this is what I want dads to do. I want dads in these moments to slow them down. Like, the reason why what you're doing isn't strength is because you're letting the kid dictate the moment. The kid is controlling you. You are not controlling yourself. The reason why you feel like you need to control that kid is because you're out of control and you're trying to. So like in this moment, I felt like Brendan was controlling me. Like I needed Brendan to get that thing out of the room because I didn't want to blow up on him. But if he makes me blow up, I'm going to have to blow up. So I think dads really hate that. They don't want their kids to control them. So I'm like, then take your power back, Dad. You're being completely weak by giving all your power to them. They are deciding who you are in these moments. Why don't you decide? So like in this moment, what was strength to me is I'm looking at Brendan, I'm staring at him. And it's like I'm using the force. I'm trying to like control Brendan with the force and trying to make him pick it up. Yeah. And then I started to smile. And then Brennan smiled and we both laughed. And I was like, dude, what was happening? And Abby goes, Dad, that was weird. Like you guys were both just like staring at each other. And I'm like, I know, Brennan, I was like thinking I was using the force and I was going to make you pick it up. And he's like, it felt like you hated me. Like it really felt like you just didn't want me at all around. And I was like, oh, buddy, I'm so sorry. That wasn't what, but that was what he felt. And then we hugged each other. And then Sarah, I said, hey, grab that stuff, take it out. And he goes, okay, cool. He
Mhm.
just took it out. But I think those kind of ideas of dads don't want to be controlled. Dads don't want to be made to do things, right? And so this very thing that you are fighting against in the kid is actually you're giving all of your power away. Why don't you actually take all your power back and actually be the human you want your kid to be?
Mhm. Beautiful, beautifully said. Okay, I pressed you enough times that you finally you finally kinda got to the root
No,
of that
it's
power
Sarah.
thing.
Sarah, I appreciate you with the continued questioning because it continued. I love this journey, and I love. I mean, there's still so much work I'm doing, Sarah, all the time as a dad. There's still so many times I default back to those old ways. I think because I think they are wired deep, and so it's fun to look back at these stories and go, man, yeah, these were key moments where I started to create new neural pathways to think differently.
Well, I think the thread that's been going through this whole conversation is just like, what kind of relationship do you wanna have with your child? Like, for dads, like, do you want your kid to still wanna spend time with you
Yeah,
after they move out? Do you want them to you wanna be the first person they come to when they
yeah,
have a problem? Do you wanna feel nurturing?
yeah,
And I think that it's a human need that we all wanna feel nurturing,
yeah.
and it's just hopefully we're raising a new generation of men that will be able to feel that way more easily
Well, and I think
without
those dads are
blocks.
also seeing that the techniques they're using when the kid is young is actually making it almost impossible for them to have any relationship with them when they're teenagers,
Mhm.
you know? And so I think lots of them, when they take time to think about it, they go, wait, yeah, I didn't have much of a relationship with my dad when I was a teenager. Oh man, maybe that's because I didn't think my dad was for me. I thought my dad was against me. I thought my dad was going to blow up every time I made a mistake or did something wrong, right? And I think every dad's heart is they really want to be a part of that. And I would tell the dad, they need you. They need you to
Yeah.
be a part of it. They
Yeah.
actually want you. Every teenager I talk to actually wants their dad to be a part of it, but
100%.
but they don't trust that it's going to be beneficial if dad is. You know, they typically think it's going to go worse if dad gets involved.
Yeah. Well, and I think underneath it all is fear, right? Because
Hmm.
dads want, I mean, one thing I hear a lot, just before I let you go, maybe we can talk about this real quick, is like, well, in the real world,
Yeah.
people aren't going to be understanding when they mess up, or people aren't going to, they'll get fired if they talk to somebody like that. And so, can you talk a little? I know, I'm sure that comes up for you too.
Oh, it
Is
does.
that
Oh, yeah,
that
yeah,
fear?
yeah.
It's the fear,
Yes.
right? Like, I want my kid
Yes.
to have a great life. I want my kid
Yes.
to be successful, and so that
Yes.
fear is what comes down and causes that urge to punish or the urge
Yeah.
to yell.
Totally. Yeah, we had a reel go to it's hit 1.4 million views right now on Facebook. And the most common thing in that reel, the reel was me actually apologizing to my teenage daughter for yelling at her. And that reel got so many. Oh, this a boss ain't gonna do that. I get this in the real world. No one's gonna take the time to. So yeah, no. When dads say that, couple things. One, yeah, I agree with you that in the world, yeah, I think that may happen, right? A boss. One, I want my daughter to know how she deserves to be treated, right? And I want her to actually never put up with that with a boss. If she has a boss who's screaming at her, leave that job, honey. You're out, right? So then, but then two, I love this concept of in our home, yeah, the real world can be harsh, but actually, what we know about development is you need to have a safe place to come back to, right? Like you don't tell your wife to get you ready for the real world. Like you're like, honey, my boss is too nice. I need you to scream at me occasionally, right? Like you actually, I'm preparing my kids to change the freaking world. Like my kids are going to go in the world and never accept that they deserve to be treated and dehumanized in the way that a lot of kids are in their homes, right? That they will come out knowing what it means to be loved and treated in a very respectful, humane way. And so, whatever they go to, they're going to raise the standard. It's going to be awesome because they're not going to be employees forever. They're going to run their own businesses, have their own careers, and then they're going to treat their people this way. It's going to be awesome. Let's go change the world rather than preparing them for the darkness that is coming to them, right? There's no other place you do that. You don't say, hey, by getting harder, you're going to get better. It's actually, let's prepare you and give you the skills that you need to go own that thing you're going into, right? To be the best at it.
I remember. I don't know if you were part of this conversation, but when we were doing our training with Dr. Laura, she was at that point. She was doing a lot of stuff in China. I don't know if you remember that. She
Yes.
was
Yeah,
like
I do.
going to
Oh, yeah.
China and speaking there and talking to people
Hmm.
there. And I asked her. I said that so doesn't fit with my idea of like Chinese parenting in terms of like, like the drilling and
Yes.
long hours at school and, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah.
Yeah.
And she said, frankly, I think that they're recognizing that peaceful parenting is actually the way for their kids to get ahead.
Yeah.
Those
Yeah. I love
soft
it. Yeah.
skills, right? The
Yes.
the
Totally. Yeah.
EQ.
Yep. Yeah. No. No. And I think that's the sales pitch too with that. That's why I told you with lots of dads will come in to that first coaching session and be like, I actually just learned some of this stuff down at this business thing because they're realizing like businesses that do the totalitarian, authoritarian way, they're not succeeding
Hmm.
because they have a high turnover. People
Yeah.
keep leaving, right?
Yeah.
So like think of it. So most dads can get that. When you say like any employer who's doing this, they don't have happy employees. They don't
Hmm.
have content employees who go the extra mile. They just do as much as they have to get you not to yell at them, right?
Yeah.
And that's exactly what the kids do. That's how humans work, you know?
Yeah, totally. Well, this has been a great conversation. The last question I'll ask you is one I ask all my guests, which is if you could go back in time to your younger parent self, what advice would you give yourself?
I think the one I'd want to say is, man, to really be more intentional about about the anger. I really want to go back, and I think I'm much better now. But even early on, I guess that that's what it took a while to learn. That's as I'm reflecting on it, is there was so much shame associated with my anger, And that kept me kind of trapped for a couple years until eventually I stopped beating myself up about not being a perfect parent. Because, Sarah, in the work we're in, there's a lot of pressure to be. And so I would constantly be like, Kyle, you're doing exactly, you're blowing up in a way you not tell a dad to do. Right. And so to forgive myself quicker, to let that shame go away quicker. So then I could really just grow and build a better connection with my kids, even when I screw up. And that's what I've been doing over the past 4 or 5 years. Is every screw up is an opportunity for me to actually become closer to my kids, because they know I don't expect myself to be perfect, and nor do I expect them to be perfect.
Nice. Where's the best place for people to go and find out more about you and what you do?
Great. So they can go to the podcast. The podcast is The Art of Raising Humans. And then also go visit us on Facebook, on TikTok, on Instagram, The Art of Raising Humans on there as well. Currently, we've gotten up to 95,000 followers on Facebook, which is great. And the other ones are growing as well. And then the website is www.parentinglegacy.com. And there they'll find links to all that stuff, to the podcast, to other things we're doing. And so, yeah, we'd love to have them, if they're interested, especially if any dads are interested in just talking to another dad about this stuff. Love for have them seek out and journey with them.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kyle.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me, Sarah.